Our next speaker is Mike Stevens. He's director of Granite Sky, a UFO support group. Mike is also co-host of Exeter Terrestrial, nice one, a monthly show on Exeter TV, which explores the unknown. He co-hosts, along with Valerie Lofazzo of Ancient Wisdom Energetics, and AJ Kitt of the KRI Center for Consciousness Studies in Stratham, New Hampshire. The three have been working together for a decade, investigating and researching all aspects of the unknown. Over the years, they have helped to educate and support those who have encountered the unexplainable and built a heartfelt community for those seeking answers. Through their unique perspectives, the trio comes together as Exeter Terrestrial to help bring awareness, answers, and support to the public. The title of their talk is Experiencers of Perception. What happens during an experience? What is stronger evidence to uncovering an experience, the emotional connection to the experience, or what can be scientifically proven? Join us as we take a look at the experiencer phenomena through the perceptions of experiencers, empaths, and researchers. Please give a warm welcome to our next speaker.
Okay. Hello, and thank you, everybody. Peter did a great job, except he somehow got an old bio, so we'll just move on with it. As Peter said, my name's Mike Stevens, and I am the founder of Granite Sky. What Granite Sky is a support service for anybody who's had any type of UFO encounter or abduction experience. The main focus of Granite Sky, besides supporting people, is putting people before proof. There's lots of nuts and bolts ufologists out there, and it has its place, but not more important than the people who go through it. If a building catches on fire, of course we want to find out why the building caught on fire, but it's not more important than getting the people out first. So we'll just click through this real quick. Basically what we do for services, we provide personal support, family support, private and public experiencer group support, ongoing support, breaking through support, which is sometimes getting the help yourself isn't enough. You need to find a way to tell it to those around you, your friends and family. Basically any aspect of being an experiencer, we try to help with. It's great to be back in this historic building. Part of the 1965 incident at Exeter actually took place in this building, down by where the Chamber of Commerce and the bathrooms are located now, was the police station back in 1965. So the second to helping people, the other goal of Granite Sky is to keep history alive and let people know that these stories don't just fade away with time, that they're real, they're part of history. So this is the first year I've been lucky enough to be here on a Saturday afternoon and not out on the trolleys keeping their story alive. But those guys are doing a great job out there, I heard today. Second to that, I was instrumental in getting the historical marker for Betty and Barney Hill put up in Lincoln, New Hampshire. With Kathleen Martin's help, and hopefully she'll be back next year or in the future, we're able to push that through. Again, these things, just because not everybody wants to believe it, doesn't mean they're not true and shouldn't be remembered. And also with that, we also support the Tom Reed UFO Park in the Berkshires of Western Massachusetts. His family case, or the most famous incident of his family's case, was in 69 in September. Why does all this matter to me? Why am I involved with it? Because I'm a lifelong experiencer myself. You can find most of my stories in Nomar Slovik's book, Granite Skies. But we'll get more into that later. We're gonna cover everything from lights in the whites to grays in the granite. But before we get to that, speak your voice, even if your voice, speak your truth, even if your voice shakes. It's so important to get these stories out. Because you never know, your story could be the key to somebody else's prison. Your story could give somebody else the strength to stand up on their own and let their story be told. We have to face the facts. We experience a phenomena. We don't necessarily know what it is. We tend to believe it's extraterrestrial in nature, but we all experience something, and it's a phenomena. But the real problem is a people problem. We have a people problem by not allowing each other to share their stories, to share their truth, to support them. Trauma is trauma. It affects the brain the same way. It doesn't matter if it comes from a battlefield or if it's related to UFOs and abductions. Trauma is trauma. It affects the brain physically. Every day, we have 22 veteran suicides because they can't get the mental health they need. If they can't get the help they need, who's going to help the experiencers? And this isn't including overdoses and alcohol-related incidents because there is no treatment. We need to stop the stigma around mental health in general. We need to stop the stigma around abductions and experiences and UFOs. If not, the blood will be on our hands. We need to make it about people, not proof. There's time to find the answers for the nuts and bolts part of things. But in the meantime, we have to take care of the people. I'm up here today telling my little story. And it's not maybe all that impressive. One person talks about their experience. But if it helps somebody else talk about it, it's nothing really to dance about. It's a couple people. Maybe they're crazy. You know, nobody really looks at it. But if that inspires more people to tell their story and come forward, we start to get something that even if you don't really want to believe and use, anybody can see we have something of value. And if that trend continues, we get something we desperately need, change. So that's why I'm here today. I don't care if you believe me. I don't care if you don't believe me. I just want you to listen to people and treat people as people. There's a lot of stress, a lot of things out there going on. But that's why I'm out here, just so one person can find their voice and be the next one on this stage. So jumping back into my story, I was about 3.5 years old, not far from here in Southampton, New Hampshire, at my grandmother's house. There was some type of family function going on, aunts, uncles, and all this stuff. And the way their house was set up, there was a sun porch or 3-season porch off the dining room. And when I walked by it, I got this sudden urge to go outside. I don't remember how I got outside, but when I got outside, I found my cousin standing in the driveway. She's about 6 months older than I am. The chances that one of us made it out of the house with nobody noticing, pretty unlikely, but the fact that both of us it doesn't even make sense. So we were just standing in the driveway, not knowing why we were there. And the next thing we noticed, the woods behind my grandmother's house started glowing red. All you could see was the shadow and the outline of trees. This redness rose, and then when it got to the top of the tree line, this object appeared. It looked like your classic saucer-shaped object, domed on the bottom, domed on the top, middle. The object then made its way over to the driveway and parked itself beside a large tree my grandmother had at the end of it. This was our closest look at it for a bit, and we could notice that it had a ring of lights around the center of it. They were going, they didn't look like light bulbs. It was more liquidy, more flowing. And it was just kind of a rolling soft white light, soft white blues. There was a real intensity of something was wrong, being stared at. The next thing we know, the light bar changed to bright reds, oranges, and started flashing faster. When that happened, like when you open your car door at night, some type of interior light came on this thing and revealed a row of windows right above that light bar. And we could make out the shadows of shoulders and heads of something. We couldn't see any details. The next thing I remember, the object was at the other end of the driveway by the street side, just above the telephone pole. It sat there for a minute and then just kind of shrunk off into nothingness. So that was my first memory of anything of this nature. I always felt like something happened in the middle, but I couldn't remember. But this is my standing memory. And I did look into that middle part, but we'll get into that later. So fast forward 40-something years to this spring. I was camping in the White Mountains National Forest with my girlfriend, and I started to notice something in the sky. I was trying to get her attention to look at it. She wasn't listening because she was seeing something on the ground. She was trying to get my attention to look at the ground. Once we figured out that we're looking at sort of the same thing from different perspectives, we saw a large white light, probably about the size of a Bic pen if you held it out at arm's length. Not the long way, just in the thickness. Way too big to be a star or a planet. It came in just above tree level and started scanning the area with some type of beam of light. This beam of light would light up like 500, 600 square feet at a time. Then behind it, another 3 or 4 objects came in and started doing the whole thing, and they seemed to be scanning this whole area. After we watched it for a little bit, the objects seemed to either come into a formation. Our impression, even though we couldn't see anything else, was that they docked or went into a part of a larger object. And then after that, they all moved out. As far as we're aware, nothing else happened that night. So that was just this spring, from 3.5 years old. And it's been that way my whole life, basically. So jumping back to that missing spot from that first experience, ended up going to a hypnotist to see if I could remember any more details. I don't remember how I got onto the ship, but I seemed to be in some type of a doorway. And what I could see was this creature from about its shoulders down to its torso, kind of hunched over with an extra like wrist part, just kind of down the end of a hallway. He was kind of like an olivey drab green, and not drippy, but it looked wet, kind of had a sheen to its skin as well. The next thing I remembered was having beings around me. I couldn't see them physically in the hypnosis. I don't know whether that was because I was still so fearful that my mind wasn't going to unlock it, or if I really just couldn't remember yet. But there seemed to be a couple by my head and a couple by my feet. And during this process, even though this was the first time I remembered, there seemed to be a reconnection that this had happened before. So as we were going through this, I don't know if I was on a table or I didn't feel anything under me, but I wasn't standing up, I was laying down. And it really seemed like most of the commotion was at my feet end. And the ones around my head and shoulders were just kind of distract me. When I was able to figure out what the commotion down by my feet end was, I realized it was my cousin. Sorry. I realized it was my cousin being worked on. And that's when I snapped myself out of the regression. So growing up, me and my cousin had always just had the surface conversation of remember the UFO we saw when we were kids. Nothing further than that. And then we just went off and played and did whatever. So after this, I decided I had to call her and tell her. But I wanted to see what she remembered first. She told me something completely different, something I had forgotten about until she said it. But she had no recollection of the encounter I just described. What she recalled, we were again at my grandmother's house in Southampton. I think we were older, about 8 or 9 at this point, but not looking across the road, but looking at the neighbor's house on the side. This red dot came into view in the sky. And once it noticed, we noticed it, or there was some type of connection made to this, it started moving in figure 8 circles in the sky and pretty much dancing, doing maneuvers that didn't make any sense for anything that was piloted to do. And they were just maneuvers that couldn't be done by a pilot. So that house was actually family land, and we would end up moving into it right around 3rd grade. And I didn't realize it was going to be a lion's den of activity for me. 2 of the major things that happened while living there was a reoccurring nightmare of glowing arms coming through the wall. And those dreams lasted for years after that as well. But the other thing that happened while living there was I was visited for a time for about 6 months. It's hard to tell exactly. Probably not every night, but more than once a week. What would happen is a ball of light would shoot in through the window, and then these beings would appear. Again, I don't know if it's memory, fear, or what. I couldn't remember, I could never see what they looked like. But by energy, their energies and such, there were 2 males, 1 female, and on one occasion a small male child. The 2 males usually didn't let me off the bed. They stayed at the bedside, and they were very militaristic, not in an aggressive way, but in a firm way. He needs to learn his lessons. He needs to learn this, understand it. Nothing was ever left to chance. They always knew what the next move was going to be. The female often paced in the corner and actually seemed more motherly. And I would see her some other times as a small white deer. The woods between that house and my grandmother's house had a trail that went back to the Powwow River, which was our playground growing up. And there were multiple times that we knew the woods like the back of our hands, but time would freeze. If we were a group of us cousins with my grandmother, a lot of them would get frozen in time, and then some of us would get brought into clearings that really weren't there most of the other time. And on other occasions, I'd be sat on a small log with a small white deer, which had the same energy as the female. It almost seemed like if the other part of it was school, this was recess. Then one night, I looked down and I saw the back stairs to the house that went into the laundry room. And then to get to my bedroom in the back, you had to go through the laundry room. And I didn't understand what was going on. So I kind of twirled my head to look around, and that's when I noticed blood on some type of a white cloth or fabric. It ended up being that the female being was carrying me down. I had a nosebleed and the blood was mine. I can't say for sure, but my interpretation of the situation is that they interceded with another abduction. Whether it's another race or something, I don't know, I can't say. We got into the house and I could actually see them this time. And like I said before, they're very militaristic, one step ahead of the game. This time they were frantic, like they stepped in, they did something they weren't supposed to get involved with. They looked kind of like what you'd see your typical gray alien looking like, the big eyes, you know, almond-shaped eyes with a head, big head, except they weren't as pitted and molted looking as some of the descriptions you see. They were more porcelain-like, whiter with tinges of blues and purples. That was the last time I saw them that I know of. I've had other encounters with white deer as an adult that I kind of think is them, but I can't say for sure. So after that, we moved up to Farmington, New Hampshire. This is like 4th grade. And me and my brother used to take crayons and mount them on this lamp we had. That's the actual lamp. But the lamp was on the bookshelf right next to the window. So I was just sitting there doing that one day and looking out the window when this giant alien face appeared to me in the window. This is a 2nd floor bedroom. So I think it was more holographic or something in my mind than actually out there. But so I was staring directly at this face, you know, with not much space and a pane of glass between us, when a blue jay came crashing through it and into the window. As you can tell, I am not a small man, but I cannot be around birds now, even a little sparrow. So we fast forward to about 97-ish. We had just graduated high school. We were heading down to UNH to have some fun, I guess. And we were driving along, and there was an open body of water and a guardrail with a street lamp. And I saw something in the sky, so I pulled over. It was myself and 2 friends. We got out of the car and looked. We couldn't see anything, and then just real quick in the background, I caught the reflection of the street light on the bottom hull of an object. I pointed up and said, "There it is." The next thing I know, we were back in the car. Both my passengers were now in the back seat. I was just sitting in the driver's seat, kind of staring at the ashtray. And this image of his face came into me. And then it showed me a beer bottle. So we all got out of the car, and in between the tire and the curb, there was a broken beer bottle. And we all decided that's what we pulled over for, and went about our nights and never talked about it again. And it's stories like this that they make no logical sense. There's no way I pulled over for a broken beer bottle on the side of the road that I thought was something in the sky. It just doesn't make sense. But we convince ourselves of these things so we don't have to deal with it, so we can move on. So this is later in life. My brother was looking at a piece of property in a rural area. We had just seen a bunch of deers, so they were kind of like fresh in our mind. We started walking down the driveway of this property, and out of nowhere, this like pixelated smiley face just kind of popped up and popped down, and I didn't know what it was. So I kind of reached out my hand and stopped my brother for a second. And then when we both looked up, there was a gigantic deer, a whitetail. I don't know if we have any hunters out here. You know, what constitutes as a big deer is not this. This thing was the size of a moose. So I think it weighed what a moose would weigh. My brother argues that it's not a moose, so it's a deer. It's, you know, it's built a little different. It's leaner. So my brother's weight guess is more conservative than mine, but his weight guess was still an 800-pound whitetail. That doesn't happen. And then just another weird critter story. I'd had a week where I'd had 2 sightings within the week, nothing major that I'm aware of, just happened to catch stuff in the sky. I was getting ready for work, had my cup of coffee, and I was putting on my boots out on a little side porch area so I could have a cigarette with it. And this creature just came walking up the sidewalk and sat and stared at me. It had a smaller, like, weaselly head with the big eyes, and then its body went down and got fatter towards the end, almost like a raccoon. And it just sat there and stared at me. I said, I don't know what you are, but it's too early for this and you're freaking me out. And when I said that, it got up and left. And then I was like, wait, it understood me? What is going on? We had just moved. We had a two-bedroom apartment. The kids were getting bigger. They needed their own room. So we moved just down the street. The landlord had a 3-bedroom open up. I found myself get up in the middle of the night and walk back to the old house. I was standing out front, just waiting for something, I don't know. I eventually walked over to the side of the house. When I walked over to the side of the house and could see the other corner, I could see a basketball-sized ball of white light. When I looked at it, it started rising towards me. And for whatever reason, before it got to me, my mind said, it's a big white dog, it's gonna pounce. So I turned myself away from it to shoulder the impact. And then after I didn't feel an impact, I opened up my eyes and found myself about 15 feet surrounded in blue light, hovering above the yard, and woke up in bed screaming. On this incident, I was taken somewhere. The only features on this landscape I could see, it looked like dumpsters in the snow. There were little like bunkers. Other than that, it just looked like a solid white landscape. I was made to dig into the earth, or I don't know if earth is the right term, into the ground, and it was kind of like when you get that snow that's crunchy on the top and then powdery underneath. It was kind of like that, but almost sandy, but you couldn't really get a hole because every time you dug into it, it would fill back in just as quick. After that, I saw the presence of another being in the horizon and was shown images of destruction on Earth, planetary floods, volcanoes, earthquakes, just natural disasters after natural disasters. I was then being walked up the driveway by a set of creatures that looked like your gray archetype, but they were about 5 feet tall and brown in color. There was one on each side of me. And normally, when I'm in these situations and they have to tell me something, I hear it in my head, but I don't hear them talking back and forth to each other. We were going up the driveway, and I heard one of them say to the other, And again, not out loud. Don't let them turn around. So of course, the first thing you do when you hear that is you try to turn around. When I turned around, there was a large 6-foot creature, maybe 7 foot. Kind of looked like the creature from the Black Lagoon, but it had more cat-like eyes. And that's the last thing I know about it. There was no disturbance in the driveway the next morning when I woke up. This was about 2 years ago. I was out camping, and I just found myself in the middle of the woods. I'd done all my camp chores. I was just sitting by the fire, relaxing, and I just found myself standing in a patch of woods that I didn't know where I was, which I was a little aggravated for, because this was kind of one of the first times they'd never even tried to get me back close to where we started. I thought I should have had frequent flyer points by now, but I guess not. So I saw a log or a downed tree up ahead, and I said, I'm going to walk up to that, sit down, and get my bearings. So I walked up to that, and when I got to it, I could see a clearing, and in this clearing, there were about 5 objects. I could see 5 things. I don't know if they were connected or not, but they're all kind of in a row. They look kind of like a black, shiny, mirrored glass. And there were probably about double the size of a piece of plywood each. It's probably like 8 by 16 foot, just black mirrored squares floating in the woods. I decided pretty quickly that that was not the direction I wanted to go in. I knew if I was anywhere near I started, I was on a peninsula of land, and I should have water on 3 sides of me. So I decided I'd just pick a direction, hope it wasn't the one direction that wasn't in my favor, and hit water, put my tree against the back, and, sleep the night away and figure it out in the morning. So I walked for about 45 minutes and I found shoreline. I was lucky, I found a piece of trash that I'd seen earlier on the day, so I knew how to get back to my campsite from there. And then I made it back to my campfire. It was out, but it wasn't very big to begin with. I mean, just the time I walked, it would have burnt out. So I don't know if it's an indication of any other time. But yeah, so I got back and got the fire re-going and sat there next to the fire until I finally passed out, and woke up in the next morning. But anybody who knows me knows I love camping. I love being in the woods. It's a passion of mine, but I seem to run into a lot of stuff. This is one particular site. I should say that the other site was on Pawtuckaway Lake too. I have one site on Pawtuckaway Lake I go to, I like a lot. It's remote. And we've had a multitude of sightings and experiences there. Not only myself, but others involved. My daughter had a little friend camping with us, and there was one morning they woke up, and the whole campground was just buzzing, like an electrical buzz. We couldn't see anything. It wasn't an insect. It wasn't a boat. It wasn't a chainsaw. It was just a weird electrical buzz that finally disappeared. I think it was 2 nights later, they walked out to go to the bathroom. We didn't really get good service there, so they wanted to go to the parking lot, check their phones, and do all the stuff, teenage girls do. My daughter's been camping at that campground since she could walk, probably 4. And she knows it very well. So they walked out the trail to the parking lot to go to the bathroom, came back to the trail to come back into camp. It's probably a 150-foot trail. It's not very long, probably from me to those doors. She got about 10 feet in, and they heard an owl hoot. The next thing she knows, her and her friend were across the campground. Luckily for her, she knew the campground. She knew how to get back on the roads and had to try it again. She was trying to explain it to me. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. You know, I'm probably one of the better people to understand it. And she's like, yeah, but you don't get it. It's all rocks. It's all hills. It's all, how could I get off the trail? How could I miss the trail that bad and get there? And I'm like, you probably did. And she's seen other UFOs with me. She's actually seen them with me and our other speaker, Valerie, before. I don't know if that's going to be able to see, but here's the same picture, darker. No, probably the other way. These are the marks my girlfriend at the time got on her leg camping there. I'm not sure what you can see with the light, but looks like more like a puncture mark. And then within this area, there's dots too. We ended up, after that, having to go to a conference, more paranormal based than UFO, but there was a couple there we knew who were both experiencers who ran a paranormal team. And I was showing them the picture, and the female part of the team pulled out her phone, had the same one from about the same time. But this is a part where, you know, as an experiencer, it's not just you. It's not only having to deal with your own emotions, trauma, and things. You get to this point where it's affecting the people around you, your family, your friends, your kids, and there's nothing you can do about it. And that weighs heavy on you. And if there's not support, it's one of the reasons we do what we do. I care so much about this, because you're not just an experiencer when the experiences happen. You're not just an abductee when that light's in the sky that night. You are forever, from that moment onward, going to have to wonder, is it going to happen today? What's going to happen? Who's it going to happen to? And it's a lot to it. And the real solution is being able to talk about it, being able to get the help, being able to remove the stigma. There's a church on every corner in every town of New England. We don't all believe the same thing, but that's fine. But we can't have support for something that's physically affecting people. We can't remove a stigma about mental health. We need to do better as a people. But yeah, so some of the stories I shared with you, plus a lot more in the book Granite Skies. We have some out there. You can get it on Amazon or from Nomar, the author's site. I'll be doing a sky watch at America's Stonehenge on October 4th. And then another one on the USS Salem, October 26th. And then, of course, you can find more information about us and meetings on Facebook or our website. But I just want to kind of leave it with this, and then we can open it up for questions. We can battle opinions without battling each other. Just be kind. You don't know whose life you're saving. That's what I got. Do we have any questions? Okay, the question was basically, do I have an implant or a tracking device? I've never had an x-ray where one's come up. I do have one that I can feel in my leg. It moves around sometimes. I can set it off with a or set off a K2 meter with it sometimes. But I don't think I don't think the implants are necessarily for tracking. I think they track us through an emotional type connection, something that we just don't understand. I think if they wanted to find a grasshopper in a field, they could do it. They don't need a chip. I think the chips are probably more for vitals and things of that nature. Yes? Pawtuckaway? Yeah. All right, well, you get two right there. Blue first, and then we'll get you? Okay. Sometimes it's more, sometimes nothing happens. Sometimes it's just about educating people. That's what a plane looks like. That's what a satellite looks like. If we're lucky and can get some activity, it depends on the group, the intentions of everybody in the group, things of that nature. Sometimes it just might be like a power-up flash type deal, or sometimes you could get something, zinging through the sky. It really, depends. We're just looking. We have no control over it or anything. It's just a cool place to do it. Yes.
Between what hours do you typically have your experiences, and also, do you know if there's been any studies done if any of these extraterrestrial experiences have ever occurred during aurora borealis, northern lights, or because there's so much going on with the atmosphere during aurora borealis that it would detract extraterrestrials from landing or coming?
I would say you probably have more sightings during an event like that because you have more people looking up, trying to catch a glimpse of something. I don't know that there's any records of, or at least not that I'm aware of, but I don't know that anybody's tracking celestial events like that compared to abductions, encounters. Does that answer your questions? It can vary. I've seen stuff in the daytime. For me, it's usually about 10 or after. Usually by then I'm done doing whatever I'm doing. I'm just relaxing and actually paying attention, or not preoccupied with something else. A lot of the times there could be stuff all around us, and we're just too busy to notice. The other part of it is, our senses are on a range. We can only see in so many spectrums. We can only hear in certain frequencies. These things could be around us all the time, which I believe they are, and we're just not capable of detecting it all the time. Yes?
First of all, I love how they love the PowerPoint and the interactions, and that you pick yourself as a board guide. Fantastic. So think of this like all the interactions we've had from the alien's point of view. What's the point? Why are they, what's your summary of why is this happening from their point of view? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think you could ask 100 people that and get 100 different answers, and probably all 100 of us are wrong. I am of the belief that it runs in families, but why my family, I don't know. Like I said, my daughter's had some experiences with me. But when I got the historical marker put through, news of that went through the family, and that's when other family members started coming up. Apparently, my great uncle was kicked out of a Brewster Academy here in Wolfboro in the late 60s for claiming he was abducted by aliens. The school said it was either drugs or mental issues. Either way, they weren't equipped to deal with it. My parents have seen a UFO. Almost everybody in my family has had some type of encounter, but nobody ever talked about it. My grandfather's house was haunted. It was no big deal. We grew up, ghosts and stuff were normal. We could talk about ghosts at the dinner table. It wasn't a taboo subject at all, but somehow this was. We never talked about it. Yes? Yeah, so sometimes, and it's fairly common with experiencers, to not necessarily, well, once you've had enough, I guess you kind of pin it to that. But there's a lot of people who get some type of unknown anxiety or feelings of I need to be somewhere, I gotta go here, or, you know, even if it's somewhere they've never been, just an internal, something triggers them, and there does seem to be some type of, I wouldn't say warning system, but there does seem to be some indication. And I think some of that it just has to deal with, even people who have good experience report that when the interaction first starts happening, there's not a fear, but the energies that they vibrate off are in our bodies, they don't quite mesh. There needs to be a little time to kind of smooth it out. And I forgot the second part of your question, I'm sorry. Yeah, if I do everything right and I'm, you know, meditating and all that stuff, I can see stuff. My cousin actually, after our first experience, she started becoming very, very psychic, where I seem to stick with having just more of the UFO type encounters. She'd be in my grandmother's living room, talking to somebody when there's nobody there, and then when my grandmother'd be like, who are you yakking to? She'd be like, the old lady with the bad back, and like describe her so well that it couldn't be anybody. She's also had, you know, other things like that, and she follows it. I think the UFO side of it's enough for me to deal with personally, so yeah, I try to push that side of stuff, have a beer, eat red meat, coffee, like.
Do you currently have, or would you possibly in the future host an event for the general public to join you and your family for a few hours one evening to go visit one of the places where you've had encounters so the general public could possibly experience it as well?
I have to say, I have never been asked that in all my years. It would be something to consider. I can't answer it because I can't answer for everybody. But yeah, I mean, that's why I do the sky watches and stuff, just to try to bring around a general awareness of something. I don't know if people necessarily want to go back to spots where these happened with the intent of trying to let somebody else see something happen, though. Yes? Yeah. Oh, no, here, we'll start in the back. Sorry, then we've got two more. All right. Oh, yeah. As a whole and within, as within the experiencers who find each other in real life as well, I think there's definitely overall commonalities, and you know, that's pretty well established, pretty well documented. I think experiencers who find each other in real life were connected on purpose. I think every experiencer's got a piece of the puzzle. We just don't know what the picture on the box looks like sometimes, so trying to solve it is an issue. But yeah, doing these groups and letting people talk, you know, we've all been told that, you know, an abduction's pretty simple. It's pretty cookie cutter. You know, lights in the sky, get taken, get examined, get probed, get dropped off, you know, and that's an abduction. And when you let people talk and tell about what really happened, what they saw, the little, oh, I don't even know if this is part of it, but this is weird, let me say it. And somebody, and it's not in any of the literature, and somebody from across the room jumps up and says, hey, wait, I got a story just like that. And then, you know, we're starting to see how big the phenomena actually is. All right, wait, I'm not doing this again. We're gonna move our way up the line. Here, you.
Does there seem to be more phenomena in New Hampshire specifically, or is it pretty consistent amongst the other New England states? Like, would you see experience this level in Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts, or is this like kind of uniquely New Hampshire?
No, it's not even a uniquely New England thing. It's anywhere. It's but yeah, no, Maine is constantly in one of the most UFO reported states. It's everywhere. It's just we're in the region, so we hear, you know, we hear more of the stories and I think we got some of the best ones, but I might be biased on that too. But yeah, no, anywhere. Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. It's always going to be a mix of both, and I think this is one of the bigger problems trying to explain it. It's always us and them. There's people in here who are great people. Well, everybody in here is a great person, but you know, there's people out there who aren't. There's good ones, there's bad ones. There's, you know, they all have their own agendas, and you know, they're not all after the same thing. I do believe it's for a purpose. Does that purpose benefit me, or I don't know. You know, it's hard to, I can't make a judgment when I don't know their intentions. All I can do is, you know, deal with how it made me feel one way or the other. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would love to. I mean, but you know, it's with anything. I think I'd like to keep learning, whether it's them, this, that, or whatever. That's, you know, why a lot of us are doing it, not because we have the answers, because we want the answers, whether it's this, Bigfoot's, paranormal. But finally, you. Yeah, for me, I mean, there'll be areas of higher activity where a lot of stuff will seem to happen at once, and then it'll kind of peter off, and then it'll rise up again, and then it'll kind of peter off. And by that, I mean anything that I'd call noteworthy at this point. I can go out and see something moving across the sky and go, that's not supposed to do that, but it's not really that big of a deal anymore. So, but yeah, it does seem to come in ebbs and flows, and wait, oh, well, they are real white deer. There absolutely are. You know, along with the abduction experience, the owls get brought into it a lot. Mike Cleland is, you know, a great guy who's got a book, The Messengers, about that. I think I get deer because I have the bird phobia and it just tweaks me out. But deer are pretty common as well as the owls on that. But yes, there are really, you know, albino animals and stuff, usually sacred to most cultures and things. They exist, but, you know, I can knock on that. That doesn't mean a ghost can't do it too. I mean, it can be more than one thing. All right, wait a sec. The gentleman in the, yeah. Oh, I think over and over again to the same person. It's kind of the same way we have the scientific method. You put out a hypothesis, you put it into action, and then you see if it worked. And you continue, your research with that. I think that's why it's multiple. Whatever the agenda is, whether that's shaping us to be more conscious or to, whatever their reasoning is, I think it's an ongoing process. And I think that's why it runs in families as well. They want to see how things carry from one generation to the next. And the first part of your question was? Ye- Yeah, it very well could be. I mean, they've been around for a lot longer than 1947. Almost every culture has either something from the sky or star people or, I think there's something been around for a long time. I think our history, what we've told is our history, is not quite accurate. It just met people in power's needs at the time. But yeah, the ancients and, they've been aware of them. They've been around for a long time, in my opinion. And yeah, they could be definitely part of it. All right. Let me go to the brown shirt. Yeah. I think what is the bigger picture? What is the purpose of it all? For not necessarily just my scenario, but in general, like humanity's. Why is it happening here? Because that might answer. With a lot of this stuff, it always one answer always brings up 20 more questions. Then we have to wonder: is it happening somewhere else? Are they part of this cycle? Is it happening to them? These are just things we don't have ways of knowing. I got one more before you. All right. Yes. I was about 3.5, so 82. Southampton, New Hampshire. The last time I had anything major happen was this spring, but that seemed more of a close-up sighting than an actual abduction, or if there was anything after it, I don't physically remember it. I also had a bottle of rum after that to go to sleep, so that might be part of it too. Most of my memories are conscious standing memories. I'm one of the people, not a lot of experience, remember everything from start to finish. I seem to get a lot of beginnings and a lot of ends, not a lot of middles. And I think that's, my brain protecting itself. Yeah, I've had my days where I've wished, looking around at some of those things humans do, but yeah. And then, all right, you, and then we'll get. Yeah, I don't know about major. What do you mean? My immunity is pretty good, but I don't really do to, doctors and stuff. I go camping, I get dirt and natural antibiotics, and that builds up my immune system. But yes. Yeah, I think so. I believe so. I mean, I don't. I don't know if I'm pretty open to a lot of things and sometimes feel like I'm born in the wrong era type stuff, but I guess that, yeah.
After each experience, do you find that extraterrestrials leave you with a sense of fear and anxiety, or to wake up the next morning feeling a sense of calmness?
Um, Kind of neither. It's kind of more like when you wake up and you don't feel good and you're like, oh, because I stayed up too late, drank too much, I did this to myself. It's kind of like, oh, it is what it is. It's kind of like, it's an unpleasant grogginess, and some of it's not so much necessarily physical as it is just the knowing, like, again. Wait a second. Let's get to somebody who hasn't asked. Yes. Yep. Yeah, I mean, there's so many stories in this room right now, and just because people don't know them doesn't mean they're not important. Some of those little stories are some of the best ones because you just see somebody who's, it's something that would never come out of their mouth. They're just that type of person that they'd never say it to anybody unless it was true. And stories like that, whether they seem big on the scale of, a UFO-wise or not. Yeah, that seems to be less important than the character of who's. All right, let me keep. That's not 100% true. I just didn't say anything up here on that today about it. As far as, it's not always in the woods. It's Bud Hopkins documented a case that witnessed, that was New York City, that was witnessed. You have a lot of major mass sightings like the Zimbabwe school and things like that. So it's not just, secluded areas in the woods. It's not just driving down back roads. It really does happen everywhere, in almost any situation. We kind of always look at it from this American perspective. We forget this is a worldwide phenomena, and the commonalities among experiencers here are the same commonalities with experiencers everywhere. It seems a little too big to not be something. Wait, yep. Trying to get people who haven't asked one yet. I believe in that. I haven't personally seen it. I know up in some of the Ospey lakes, they believe they're kettle lakes and actually connected by tunnels underground, and they've had reports of UFOs coming up out of the lakes and diving in and coming up out of another lake since back from native times. It's over here. That one was the only one like that for me personally, but that does seem to be a trend with other experiences as well, whether some will see it as that, some will take on a more personalized task, like we got to save the dolphins, or we got to make the water clean, or we got to, but it's not uncommon within the experiencer field. But that was the only time that I recall having something like that. Yeah, that was in the White Mountain National Forest in Jackson. Yes. Yes, but from their end, I don't know. I'm sure they're doing it for a reason. Do they care if I do anything about it? I don't know. I know from my side, the human end, it's definitely, obviously, pushed me to, it's Labor Day weekend. I don't want to be here in this hot building, sweating. I want to be out camping and having fun. But I'm here because it's important, because I really do think we need to, just be open and helpful to one another. And I think we got time for one more, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I don't think it was my lab necessarily. I think just in their actions, they acted like somebody who'd been in the military, who followed orders to a T, knew everything was the right place at the right time and things like that. So I meant it more like that than actual like a my lab. Yeah, I mean, the great thing about this is I'm nothing special. The only thing I've done is open my mouth and talk about it, which allows somebody else who said, I've had this, to talk to it too. Matt's become one of my best friends because of we can talk to each other, we can support each other about this stuff. I get as much support from helping or being in a group with other experiencers for myself as they do for, it's a group thing. It's not like somebody might have to be in charge to make sure the door gets opened in time, but other than that, it's more of a really group-based healing. But I am out of time, you guys. I will be around all weekend if you have more questions, and thank you.